Hello, Niftorians. We're back for another round of the Niftorious show. I'm Creatorius Rex, and I have Scott Leach with me as always. How you doing, Scott?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Okay, so why are we here? We're here because we're talking about NFT land and the news of the week. Hopefully, we'll provide a little perspective to everybody about what's going on. And we have several topics today that we're going to go through. First topic, Web2 embracing Web3. We've got a couple of stories along those lines. Both are two of them related to Adobe and then another one to Twitter. We've got Web3 assisting Web2 in the transition. This is a big thing now. There's a lot of Web2 companies that are trying to figure out how to get into Web3. We're going to talk about a couple of Web3 projects. And if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about the so-called Web3 or NFT recession. Okay, sounds good. So let's start off talking about Web2 embracing Web3. And we've got a couple of stories here, but let's start with Adobe. So the first thing that came out was we had this conversation or this idea that Behance was going to start adding Web3 capabilities. But then I was even more interested that they're going to put some sort of NFT, I don't know what we'd call this, provenance button inside of Photoshop. You've used Adobe products a couple of times in your life. What do you think?
I think this is absolutely fantastic. We're starting to get more utility use cases that are totally native crypto stuff that can't. This does it better than anything else. So the fact that we're starting to see this, I think, is a big deal. The idea that it, in this use case, Adobe's looking at it so I can connect a wallet and then verify that this NFT was actually created by the person who says they created it. But I think that's just the start. I mean, once they build this into the software, collaboration,
right?
There's just so much opportunity. It's huge. One of the early days of Rally, when we were sort of thinking a lot about NFTs, one of the concepts that I was really passionate about, it was kind of novel, but this idea of taking an iPad and building an app that you could draw on, just like a sketching app, and it would turn that into an NFT, but you couldn't ever save it. Once it was created, it destroyed the original, so that NFT, the whole idea being that you could only make it in this one environment where you had to connect your wallet to. But this is awesome, and it means all sorts of things for the future. I'm super excited about it.
Okay, so do you have any concerns about a centralized Web2 organization becoming the authority of provenance pre-NFT mint?
Yeah, I think that really depends on how they choose to use it. If I can eventually connect a wallet of my choice to Adobe, and then it just creates a transaction or marks the ledger to say this NFT originated here with this wallet, I'm great with that. If they go in and try and come up with a walled garden solution, I'm not a fan. I'm hoping that that's not the case.
Okay, so just to give some background here, the idea that today we have digital provenance based on the NFT itself. And so somebody puts it up there, and then there's a record on the blockchain, it's transparent. And that's been a revolutionary concept around identifying original authorship of digital items. That's great. But we've seen several situations already where people have right-clicked on someone else's work. They've used that. They've created an NFT out of it. And then from a blockchain perspective, it looks like that's the original because it just happened to be the first time that it was uploaded onto the blockchain. And so this is another element that's pre-NFT that gives another validation point. And I think it could be really interesting for any type of marketplace. Let's say OpenSea is a good example here, where they can, before they approve something that might be coming through their system, they can actually do a verification on Adobe if there's one that's looking there. However, people can mint these anywhere they want. If they're minting directly to the blockchain, they can still do this. It does provide an avenue then, in that case, for the original owner to go back to people on the blockchain and just, I don't know, they can't really remove something once it's on the blockchain, but they could go and actually say, hey, you know, I have evidence here pre-blockchain that this exists. This existed and that I did the work.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, even then, I wonder how much anyone that's used Photoshop, like I can copy and paste from another file into my Photoshop document,
Ah,
and
yes.
Photoshop could still say that I originated. So I think one of the things I was reading was that they might be able to use it to take almost like snapshots. So as you're going through the process of your
Of the creation process.
yeah, but I don't know how many folks, you know, some artists might not want to share that information. That might be part of their secret sauce, or just they just want to deliver their finished product.
Well,
I think,
even if they didn't show people every stage of development, there would actually, it's different than just taking a photo, dropping it in, and then pressing the NFT button, because Adobe could
yeah,
provide some sort of step that, like, when it was created, like first date of creation would be like a great
yeah,
one, and then how
yeah,
it went through. I'm sure somebody could figure out how to get around that, but
totally. Yeah. And there's, I mean, there's other things like it could, you know, if you do press that NFT button, does Adobe eventually have some software that tries to do image recognition to see if that thing exists as an NFT somewhere? That brings up a whole nother bag of you know, can of worms in terms of at what point you're policing that process. But I think more importantly, the provenance thing is great, and I think even if it can be sidestepped, the fact that it adds another layer
yes.
to sidestep makes it that much more difficult. I'm still more excited about if it becomes easier to make NFTs and easier to collaborate and to collect royalties. You know, a lot of Photoshop work, people create brushes, they create shapes, they create libraries that can be used in Photoshop.
Yeah,
So
right.
even folks that may not be designing NFTs could still benefit from this in terms of depending on how far reaching Adobe makes it. But I could develop a set of brushes or shapes that could be an NFT that someone could then use as plugins for Photoshop, and offer me attribution or, you know, some form of royalty on that, even if it's a teeny tiny slice. So I think there's a lot of interesting things there.
So this needs to go into Illustrator as well, correct? Don't we need a comparable feature for that?
Yeah, and the fact that they're looking at Behance, and I'm guessing they'll do it across their entire suite. And really, who's better equipped at this point than Adobe? They've got software for just about every content creation. You know, whether you're doing vector or Photoshop or video work or what have you. Yeah, they're really well positioned for it.
Right. And so we talked about Behance. And so that was the other news that came out of their annual user
Mhm.
conference, that Behance is going to basically be an NFT marketplace. So I guess it's going to be, you can click the button, take your Photoshop or other asset, becomes an NFT or has some provenance associated, and then you can list it on Behance. I guess you could list it, maybe you can sell it. I didn't see a lot of details on it other than they say that there's going to be a marketplace there.
Yeah.
Is this, this is really interesting. So Coinbase has the people with wallets with crypto, with
Mhm.
most of them don't have a lot to, they don't have a lot of places to spend that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. So that's a demand side play. I've got a lot of buyers, and we'll put some art in there. This is a supply side play,
Mhm.
and the height of convenience potentially, that it's just all within this one ecosystem. I can get it out there. I don't have to learn OpenSea. I don't have to learn how to actually
Yep.
create my own contract. Maybe.
Yeah, and all these, I mean, anyone that's making digital art uses these tools, even if they don't want to. You use them. People that seek, Photoshop alternatives keep coming back to Photoshop. So, yeah, I think it's
Okay, so
really smart.
you're a creator.
Mhm.
You're also deep into Web3 and have been for some time.
Mhm.
Adobe is a citadel of centralization.
Yes.
And in fact, they got there through their own tools, but they also have acquired tools. They've
Mhm.
rolled it up, and so they have become the dominant player in this space. Not to say that there's not other tools that a lot of people like. There's new tools
Sure.
every year, best of
Mhm.
breed, better for other things. But they're the one place that everyone sort of has to use because you always have to have one element of Creative Cloud at some point in your development cycle.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, this is so I think what we're going to see, and we talked about it last week with Epic and Steam, we're going to see companies getting into this space, and we're going to find out which ones try and build up walled gardens and which ones embrace decentralization, and to what degree. And my personal opinion is that the ones that don't, the walled gardens they're going to fail. Generally speaking, that's
Yeah, fair enough.
what my gut tells me.
So they talked about it being open, which is
Mhm.
interesting. And Adobe actually has this idea of open on the consumption side. I mean, that's where Acrobat came from.
Yep.
So, and they talked about at least 4 different chains that they're going to support, right out of the gate with the Photoshop minting, and I assume with Behance as well. But it actually wouldn't really matter because once you make it available on any of those chains, you'd be able to see it. So they're clearly not Facebook, right? Like there's not the animus towards them, although it's some maybe in some quarters, but for the most part,
Mhm.
not. I mean, and
Yeah.
and they have a new CEO coming in, really focused on creators, and I guess they're seeing this as the next step. So even though they're centralized, maybe it's a centralized uh, location, kind of like Epic, that people will accept.
Yeah, I think well look, even if the hardcore people don't need to be sold on NFTs, right? They're going to do it anyway, and they're going to figure out, they're going to use whatever the most decentralized solution is, and that's fine. But the thing we keep talking about that keeps coming up is, how do you get everyone else that's coming in, that doesn't have the bandwidth to learn that? This is going to help those folks, and it's going
Yes.
to bring on so many creators. Uh, yeah, and Apple, if Adobe is creative, um, they can find some really clever pricing things around this. I think, even in terms of how the licenses, my license to Adobe, whether I have the suite or just one piece of software, that could also be handled as a token. There's
Mhm.
lots of ways that they could start to explore. I mean, they could change their whole model of how they.
Oh
I
yeah,
know they switched to
interesting.
subscription a while back, quite
It
a
could
while
be if
back,
you use
but
certain types of things and you're doing enough transaction volume on Behance or something like that, and they're
yep,
charging it 2.5%. Now, be clear, they haven't said what transaction fees or any of these things are going to be. That might cover your costs. That would be really interesting, and in
yeah,
fact, it would be a way for Adobe to make a lot more. What they've done with Creative Suite is really innovative from a subscription standpoint. It was very hard for them to make the transition. They really have held on maybe a little too much to this download model. I think it's just a performance thing, and it's been for many years it was the worst of both worlds. So you you pay the subscription fee, but you still had the
mhm.
download, and it was really really difficult. But I think they've sort of worked that out,
They
and
absolutely have.
they've
They've
got
made it
pricing.
easier.
They've
Yeah,
got pricing that people have accepted, which actually is not a bad deal if you're using multiple items in the suite.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
question is, how
and
can you
that's
do
the.
more?
I think that's the good thing about their model now, is you start to use. I mean, I got a subscription on my personal computer last year because I got a new computer and I was doing a lot of work. And I started adding more and more stuff to it. And I realized, like, oh, they finally figured it out. That's when it hit me in that moment of like, it's easier to they've made it easy to pay more to get what I need. Anyway, yeah, I think this is huge. And I think the fact that they're thinking about it this early makes me think that they're thinking about it correctly. And by correctly, I mean thinking about it in a decentralized way and trying to make it as open as possible. But we'll see.
We'll see. All right, great. That's a great way to wrap that section up. Let's stay on this topic of Web 2 embracing Web 3, and let's talk about Twitter. Okay, so we had this idea of NFT verification. We said that a few weeks ago. We were talking about this, how that's really going to be important because it's just that one more level of the status verification of making these Web 2 artifacts available in Web3, creating more awareness about, or excuse, in Web2, being like Twitter and social media. Okay, great. Now we see from Jane Manchung Wong. She's, if people don't know her on Twitter, you should definitely give her a follow. She goes into all the big applications. She actually decompiles them. She looks at what's coming next, things that show up in the code before it actually is revealed as a feature. And what she found was Twitter's actually going to go beyond just verification. It looks like they're going to have a collectibles tab in your profile. So right now you can see tweets, you can see retweets, you can see images or other media is really the way to talk about it. But then you could have collectibles in there. So right now, if people want to see, it's like, oh, here's my OpenSea wallet. You can just go there and you can look at what's in my wallet. Now you just put it in Twitter. And that's going to be even easier for people to see. I believe this is the Web3 flex on Web2 of all time so far.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. I said this before, but I think it's neat to see how Twitter is kind of becoming super relevant again around NFTs specifically in Web3. And the fact that they're embracing it so much, I think is just a cool. I've always liked that platform despite its missteps, and I think that it's. I mean, again, this is another example of like utility, and in a way that is natively NFT crypto. Like it's provably owned by this person. I think that, it's cool. Status is becoming a bigger and bigger thing around this. And I think we'll see if there's fallout and how that takes shape, but also what sort of opportunities emerge for the folks that own those NFTs. I mean, the ape follow ape thing's a good example of, in a way, we've talked about the community aspect of all this, but you really can build pretty tight networks around these collections of NFTs that can be hugely powerful and beneficial to your career or happiness or,
yes. Yeah. So status and affinity. So I think about this idea of affinity, creating these common links with other people. I mean, people understand this intuitively. You meet somebody, you start talking to them, where are you from? And then, oh, I've been there before, right? So there's these natural ways that humans connect around shared experiences. And so the verification is pretty great for your PFP. And it's not surprising to me that they're actually doing this now that I think about it, because we saw the screen flow that one of the Twitter designers showed on Twitter for how you're going to connect your wallet. You're going to be able to see all your NFTs. You'll be able just to click on it, and that'll become your avatar. Okay, so that's really interesting. Pretty simple. Now that you have that, why not make that just a gallery where you can show some people? That's going to be probably the easiest way to expose this to the world. And it actually gets beyond a couple of these things and goes into that shared experience and that affinity model, because people can only see one PFP as your profile picture at a time. But if you're in the space, you might be really active in 4 different communities. And this is something that I've faced. Which one do I put up? Right now, I've got the mutant ape up because I've been aping a lot lately. And so that's really cool. But I've got a really cool Roboto that I like to flex. I've been active in Crypto Dads, which is really cool. So people who come and look at my profile, we're still very limited in the number of characters we can say. So we can't really say like all the things that we're associated with, but people can hit that collectibles tab. They're like, oh, I'm getting a better picture of this person. This person has this and that and that. Oh, I have that too. Even though I don't have a mutant, which is the profile picture, I do have a Roboto. And oh, this is someone that I have a connection with.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, that's a fantastic point. And I could see them going even further along those lines. I was just looking, when you go into search and you have trending in news and sports and entertainment, I could see them starting to break those different ways to explore and navigate
based on your
by
NFT.
the
What's
collections.
trending by
Yeah.
people who are in your communities?
Yeah. And then I don't know if that will cause them to explore like a gated stuff, because I think that has to be coming. Whether it's whatever their live equivalent, their
Twitter Spaces, you mean?
yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, gated by NFTs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
So I think there's a
they'll be able
lot
to
of
get to that
opportunities.
first. Yes,
Yep.
in the social audio
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. It's
And
just.
Twitter Spaces is really going strong right now.
Mhm.
So okay, so that's a crazy interesting idea. The other thing is so if I think about it just in terms of other people, like maybe I don't know them already, or maybe I already know them on Twitter. I'm looking at their profile, look at their collectibles. There's a lot of folks who would be like, "Oh, I didn't know you were in Robotos too. Maybe we can do something," because all these communities have things that are coming up,
Yep.
which are amazing. So I love that idea as well. And the other thing, I just like the convenience of it. If I want to change my PFP, I've created an album on my phone that I can switch
Yep.
things around, but then I have to, it's like 4 steps to get it in there and then to change if I can just in Twitter, maybe every day I have a different PFP that I focus on. Maybe Mutant Mondays, I have that. And then Tuesdays I do
Yeah. There you
Robotos
go.
or something like that. And just that quick switch, which I already do, like when I'm in Clubhouse, sometimes we got 3 or 4 different things that I switch out, but I have to do it through the album as opposed to within the app. And so there's extra steps.
Yeah. I think it's just starting. We're starting to see all this, the utility promise come to fruition. And it's cool to see these companies embracing it. And it's neat to see the companies that are choosing to embrace it, because it's not the Goliaths right now. I mean, don't get me wrong, Twitter's a big deal, but not.
Twitter and Adobe are pretty big deals. But I would say that, it's interesting that Dorsey's all in. I think we can see that.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is the fact that
Square and Cash App and
yeah,
Twitter.
the Google, Android, and iOS still not taking a stand, I think is a mistake. I think that, I know Facebook had their coin thing going, but I don't know. I'm excited to see some of these companies doing stuff, and I'm glad that it's companies that are, I don't know, they're just not dominating. They're big companies, don't get me wrong, and Adobe has the space locked up pretty well, but they're also
not the
old
Titans.
companies that are, yeah,
they're not the FANG, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
GAFA or whatever acronym you want. Yeah, I mean, I think Zuckerberg sharp. He obviously has seen this. If you want to see where things are going next, I think you do well just like follow Zuckerberg to see what he's thinking about, whether he can execute now and whether there's too much trouble with that brand that a rebrand won't really overcome. I don't know, but he has more headwinds, and it's really interesting that Twitter and Adobe are doing this because I almost feel like they're going to have the permission to make the transition, whereas some of the other players wouldn't. And Google and Apple at some point will defend their turf, and I have a feeling they're going to do it in opposite ways. Whereas Apple will just trench in, dig in further, and Google eventually will just come in. It's they're the fast follower always. I mean, people think about them doing things first. They're the really good fast follower. If you look at that, and they'll do like, oh yeah, we believed in this all along at some point, and we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, we'll see what they do. I think they got to get on board, but I mean, obviously they're not going anywhere soon.
Well, they don't want it.
I don't know.
There's this construct of this idea of AI versus Web3,
Hmm.
where one is sort of the top down and one is the bottom up. And they are the top down company. I mean, you could say Facebook and Apple are as well, but you just think about just the idea of search and the monopoly around that.
Yeah.
It's sort of and also their investment in AI really sort of follows this. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think it was Peter Thiel at first identified this idea of AI being sort of the key to centralization, and then Web3 being the alternative. And maybe they're going to be in conflict ultimately, as opposed to complementary.
Yeah. The thing I keep coming back to is mobile, specifically. And so when I say Google and Apple, I should specify that. I think they have to get on board. But they'll figure it out. I'm not worried about them.
It's a pretty powerful franchise, so I'm guessing that when they do come on board, it'll be widely adopted.
It's neat to see how it's like Twitter knew, I think, because Dorsey, that's my assumption, because he speaks about it passionately, and probably it's sort of ingrained into the culture there to some degree. I think they saw the opportunity in this stuff early on, in part because lots of NFT collectors were using Twitter as the sort of platform of choice. But they were using Clubhouse too. And Clubhouse hasn't hopped on this. And Clubhouse is relatively new, and you would think agile and quick to look at this kind of stuff. The fact that Twitter's doing it, it feels to me like they believe in it. And I think that makes a big difference down the line when you are not a tourist, when you've sort of been in it and believe in it. I think you're well positioned to, I don't know, succeed or crash and burn for your beliefs.
I think there's two things. Twitter's a much more natural place for it, because Twitter not only has the social audio, but also has the visual element. So you've got the text, but it's really easy to post your picture, and beyond the PFP, right, in your profile. So that's one. But I also believe that Dorsey's leadership over Square, because he's in financial services, was probably already closer to this. The Cash App you've been able to buy, it's a custodial wallet, but you've been able to do this for a while. So I think he was probably just more tuned into it. And once they made the decision, they're like, oh, here are all the things that we can do. And maybe we'll get a decentralized Twitter. He's actually been talking about that. I can't remember the name of that project that they're working on. Blue Sky, I think it is.
Yeah.
Which is basically to build a decentralized Twitter. They haven't had a lot of people join them. They're trying to get a consortium together to move this out. But I could see them going that direction. And as a founder CEO, he's got the street cred and the influence to actually make it happen.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do. And it's just neat to see companies embracing this and doing it in a logical way where it makes sense. I mean, PFPs are meant to be that. And the fact that you can verify them and show them off is a big deal. And Twitter makes sense. And what Adobe's doing makes perfect sense, because people, even if you're doing 3D art, at some point you're going through Adobe to sort of master that image.
Okay, let's bring that to a close. That's our Web2 flexing into Web3 segment. So segment 2 today is Web3 assisting Web2 in this transition. We have a couple stories there. One is Mojito. They just raised 20 million, which I believe is their first significant funding round to date. They may have had some friends and family in there. But Mojito is the company that many will know is powering Sotheby's new NFT marketplace. They want to bring that in. And their focus is, if you look at the details of it, it seems like it's just, anybody can run their own marketplace, their own sales on their own website, which is needed. And I've been talking to Dandelion as part of our Founders series. People check that out for the Archipelago space. They're looking at the open source version of this. The interesting thing with Mojito is it's not just you can create a web storefront essentially for NFTs, putting Web3 on top of a Web2 foundation. But they're also doing like a one-stop shop for everything. It looks like they're, doing legal. They're, helping people think through how they're going to do marketing, all these other services, which I think must be really attractive for a lot of these Web2 companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Minting everything. Yeah, I think that's a huge deal. It's, again, I think one of the neat things here is the fact that they built Sotheby's metaverse site where they sell their NFTs that you mentioned. That's another neat one to me, that Sotheby's is that ahead of the game. Like, and it makes sense. It's collectibles, but the fact that it's not a Sotheby's huge company, but it's not necessarily who you would expect to be hopping in first. Maybe it is for some people.
They're the most innovative for what it looks like right now. They're the most innovative on that. Obviously there's other big auction houses, but if you look at what they're thinking about here, and what an interesting opportunity for them. They're a great brand, obviously, in the collectibles space as an auction house. And so they could just say, oh, we're just going to do collectibles in this new format. But they're clearly looking well beyond that when we think about metaverse and creating tools that go beyond what a auction house ever could be. And you just think about what Web3 is opening up for them with the on-ramp that they have as being a premium brand in collectibles, and now being able to do all these other things to create additional utility and spaces to interact around collectible experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like positioning themselves to be a Amazon of Web3, like
right.
Digital goods. Right. Yeah, I think it's awesome. But again, it's like I worked at eBay for several years, and eBay should have been doing this a long time ago, and should have been thinking about this stuff. And I know at one point, the former CEO was talking and passionate about blockchain in terms of provenance for physical goods, to make sure that something is valid or is what it is, and it's not a replica or a whatever you call that. It's a little bit disappointing in a way, because I really like eBay, but it's cool that Sotheby's is figuring it out. And I guess that's what I like. It's kind of underdogs, even though they're big underdogs. These are not small underdogs, but in the space, they're not the person you would think
it's
of.
Like Gucci being an underdog.
Yes.
I don't know if but I will say that I love this. I do this reference to eBay because OpenSea is basically the eBay of Web3 right now. And that might change. They obviously have scale on both the supply and demand side, which is going to be really hard to displace. But hey, MySpace got displaced by Facebook, so a different model could come up. And
totally.
It's interesting. So what you have is with Sotheby's, you've got this anchor point of rich collectors. Mm-hmm. And the prestige for any artists who want to go through that platform. So that's a draw, but it's really this premium positioning, whereas OpenSea is like the everyman's, bazaar. And then we've got some of these other Web2 companies are coming in from different angles that are bringing either supply or demand, right? So it's always that, whether it's Coinbase, being in the Web3 space, they're bringing the demand in. They don't have the supply, but the supply will match the demand. Adobe's interesting here because they've got the supply side, so the supply can then draw the demand, and then Twitter's got the demand, and they could draw the supply. And so that's always think about this is the supplier. When you think about net markets, which is what most of these are at the base level, that's one of the things I always think about. And then you have this different model where you've got Mojito, coming back to them, trying to be the Shopify potentially of this space.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if they can do it and how well. There was a lot. I remember, early web days, there was a lot of folks trying to solve lots of those problems early on and trying to do everything. And it was really hard back then. And now you have, whether it's Shopify or Square, you have solutions that focus on one specific area. The fact that Mojito is looking at lots of these areas at first it sort of makes me like, oh man, are they going to be able to do that? But then again, this is totally different technology now, and it's strictly digital, and just by the nature of how it works, I think it makes sense that someone might try and provide a sort of end-to-end plug-and-play solution.
I think you need that whole product approach, and that's a place where a lot of the tech companies actually fall down. It's still an early enough market, and this is complex enough. There's not a really good frame of reference for someone who's come up through Web 1, Web 2 to really grok Web 3. And just going through myself, one of these NFT creation processes, there are a lot of moving parts. And we were having this conversation yesterday in the Niftorious Discord. You really have to bring them all together to be successful. And it's almost like if you looked at some of these voice interactive experiences, something I know quite a bit about, these could have been built. Siri-like experiences, Alexa skill-like experiences could have been built by anybody, any existing company, like a big brand or something like that. But it took Amazon putting it all together in a simple SDK and a distribution method, the whole product, right, for a lot of them to come on board. Now they've learned it, and you see organizations like Capital One starts with an Alexa skill, and a year later they have a custom assistant built into their website and their mobile phone, or their mobile app. So I think that companies like, I don't know if Mojito will be the success player here, but it's open for someone who brings the whole product together so that you limit what the customer has to learn to get started. And then over time, maybe that gets segregated out or they only have a piece of the functionality. But right now, it seems like the only way to go.
Yeah. I think it's smart. I'll be curious to see how it turns out. There's so many, having done, worked at Rally and working on building an NFT platform for creators, and then having been a creator minting, having been a creator selling minted tokens, having been a collector buying minted. There's so many sort of options out there, and there's nothing that does, like, I wish this did that. Now I have to go here to get that part done. Then I got to go over here, and then
there's only basically you've got this one-stop shop, right? And it's either going to be they're going to select a software package that does it all, or they're going to have an agency of record, a consultancy who's going to come in and they're going to make all the parts work together for them, because most of these companies are just not going to develop a competency, at least initially, in this space. And it's very high profile. So the risk of them messing it up is pretty high. So they're either going to go with consultancy / what we'd call an AOR, an agency of record in the marketing space, or they're going to go to one of these one-stop shop platforms, which probably has some services associated, baked in, customer success, which is really just a fancy way of saying services. Okay, well, we have another one in here. We've got this Glennfiddich use case, which I think is really cool. And this, again, is a company called Blockbar is assisting them with this. Glennfiddich, a very, very old company. Web 1 was a shock to their system. And then, Web 2. So Glennfiddich, for those you don't know, is a single malt Scotch, very famous. And not the highest end, but relatively high end. And they have a really interesting approach. They have these special long aging products in their Scotch, and they were going to sell them, but they actually sold an NFT first, and that NFT gives you the right to the bottle. The bottle is actually held by Blockbar, this third party. They also are helping them manage the NFT process, and as long as you hold the NFT, the bottle will be held in custody for you. But if you ever want the bottle, they will send it to you anywhere in the world, anytime. But the NFT burns immediately. And so then you have one or the other. So I think it's a really interesting model. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's super novel and clever. I also think there is utility here. Like, you can prove that you have one of those things that is a physical item that is rare and has massive value, and now you can validate who actually has it and can get it. The method for redemption is clear. It's would be hard to fake that or to hack it. So I dig it all the way around. I think it's clever and it makes sense. And again, here's another case of, like you said, it's an old company and not necessarily the first person you would think to do it. This stuff gets me more excited than like some of the James Bond NFTs that I was sort of skeptical about, and some of the other big brands that are hopping on NFTs. It feels like oh yeah, we'll just do a little of that. All these stories we have today are exciting to me because every one of them is doing it in a way that feels like, oh yeah, this is what NFTs are good for. This is what they're good at, and you're using it in a way that leverages those strengths. Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
I really like it. I mean, so first of all, I think the last I checked, they were trading at about $28,000 for this bottle of scotch. There's another angle here, though, I think is interesting, that there clearly are connoisseurs who want to have that in their collection to flex when people come by their house, or to actually consume it, which is a very expensive proposition, but clearly there's collectors that's their intent. But let's talk about the flex, and let's talk about one other use case. So first of all, the flex, if I know you come by my house, I can show you the bottle. Maybe I can put it in my social profile, but I don't have really a public flex for this. If I have the NFT, then I have a public flex. And it actually points back to what we started out with Twitter, this idea of this affinity, shared experience, common interests that we talk about. If that shows up in your wallet, you would never use it as your PFP. So people wouldn't know that you're a scotch connoisseur, right? So, okay, so you're a Bored Ape. What does that mean to me? I don't know. Maybe some people like that. Other people are like, okay, I'm not a Bored Ape. So, but I do like scotch. And all of a sudden, you're never going to list that in your, I don't remember how many characters you have now. Is it 200 characters for your Twitter profile? It's very small.
Yeah. 140 or something.
I think they may have gone up to 280.
Oh yeah.
But it's not a lot. So you're not going to put that in there. But then someone could be like, "Oh, gee, Scott, you like scotch? I'm a scotch fanatic." But we would have never had an opportunity to connect on that level, and so I think that's amazing. So you can do that public flex, but also just this public display that this is what I'm interested in. This is part of me, right? This is my authentic self.
Yeah.
There's one other area. If it's an NFT, it's going to be easier to borrow against. If it's just sitting in your house, you're really going to struggle to get someone to lend you money against that. And if you're creating a portfolio of very valuable scotch, wine, whatever, the NFT is going to be something that a creditor can say, oh, I can claim that.
Yep. Yeah. And not only that, is trading, like wine, other forms of booze,
really hard
everything else, baseball cards, old video games, like people who collect old video game cartridges and game consoles. Like you could see a place like this Blockbar, companies opening up where you go in with your physical goods, you get them validated, you get an NFT receipt for that. And now you can barter with that NFT receipt, or you can just auction off physical goods that way.
Or trades.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Trade two bottles really much more easily, because you just put the NFTs in escrow and then you transfer ownership.
Yeah.
Even easier.
It's easy for everyone. Yeah. And Blockbar doesn't have to maintain a database of who owns what. You have the NFT, you get the thing. Again, back to sort of stuff eBay could have done or still could do. Like,
we'll see. I'm not optimistic about eBay in this case. Okay. So that's we've talked a lot about Web2 companies, and that was the Web3 assisting Web2 transition. There's still a lot of business models here. This looks a lot more to me like the transition from analog to Web 1 than it does from Web 1 to Web 2 or Web 2 to mobile to me, which means there's a premium on people that can help with the transition, whether it's a services organization or it's a software company, any type of packaged product. So all the people out here are watching this, like there's a ton of business models to help with this transition. What we're talking about is just a couple of ideas. There's so many things that have to happen. But we should probably talk about Web3 projects. So native Web3 projects. And I know one of the things that you were interested in discussing was the CryptoMoms mint.
Yeah, there was like some cool, just in general, there was some cool airdrop stuff last week. So if you had a crypto dad, you got a crypto mom that you were able to mint for free. So not an airdrop, but you were able to mint the crypto mom for free.
I loved because you're just paying gas and you had a whole
Yeah.
week to do it, or maybe it wasn't a week, but it was several days. So you could pick the time when you wanted to do it.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, this is like, again, one of the neat things about projects that keep on giving back to their communities, that you already own the crypto dad, but now you get a whole nother NFT that has value associated with it. And I think to some degree, we know that a lot of these PFP projects or they're also betting on a future that might be gaming or might be other things. And so they're sort of like building the basic Lego pieces so that we can construct something, or they can construct something really fantastic. So I think some people, I've heard them say, well, you're sort of just kicking the ball down the road. You're just getting another thing. What does it do? I think we're going to start to see how some of these projects utilize the companions. But I love it when projects do this. It feels good. It feels good to be a member of a project and to get something for being a member. And it's exciting. It gets people interested. There seems, unfortunately, to be a consistent pattern of the price getting jacked up until the companion or the free mint comes out, and then everything goes down a little bit.
Yes. And that happened here.
Yes, it did.
I'm actually looking to pull up. So I think I've got a price at 0.35 right now.
Yeah, it's going down, and
a lot.
It seems this is absolutely not financial advice, but if you're looking to get into a project that has a core team that's passionate about it and into it, I would recommend researching crypto dads. The fact that they're cheap now, and that team is still working hard on the project, I think it's a fantastic time to think about getting one, not financial advice, but it's something I'm thinking about doing, is getting some more of those. Yeah. The other one I wanted to mention really quick, I think I said it last week, Kevin Abosh, I'm going to say the name right. He's a conceptual artist from Ireland. He's been working in doing a lot of crypto stuff for years now. So he's been at this for a while. He did a project called 1111 that he released back in March. I got one of those at the time. It was the most I'd ever paid for an NFT, 2 ETH. I was super skeptical about it. Like, oh, should I be doing this? But he was in my eyes, a legit artist, which is not to take anything away from anyone that's starting in crypto, but he had been working, making art prior to his crypto stuff, did a bunch of wild crypto projects. I just believed in it, and I believed in the NFT stuff. And so I bought one of his NFTs, and I was totally validated when it started to go up in value, and I saw the excitement around it. And he also has done, now he just did his second airdrop for a project called Sun Signals, which has 1,000 pieces, 500 pieces. So I got one of those, and then previous I got another one, this commented out airdrop. So I've gotten 2 airdrops from him, both of which are valued together. Those 2 are worth more than what I paid for the original 1111. It's just cool. It's cool to be a collector and to get rewarded this way. And I love that artist, and it just, yeah, I dig it. So it was an exciting week for me last week, because I got to get my CryptoMoms and get my new Kevin Abosh artwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say too that if we think about CryptoMoms, I was just trying to pull up on the price action on that. I think there was a floor at one point on Crypto Dads was 1.5. And it's, although if you look at some of the data, it's going to show a little bit lower than that. But I think if you actually looked at, you're on OpenSea, that would have been the floor. And that would have been about 10 days after Crypto Dads came out. And and then it sort of settled into about 0.9 for a long period of time. And now I'm seeing something that shows it's down to maybe 0.45 for an average. I think if you look at the floor right now on OpenSea, it's 0.35. So this is something people should be aware of. I think it's really important, this idea that these companions, particularly high profile ones, like the first time they have this companion, we've got Crypto Dads plus CryptoMoms, will this happen when Crypto Tots come out? Will people make sure they buy more of both those types of profiles so they can get more Crypto Tots? Maybe, because like you said, when you have this extra one, they're actually worth more. I'm going to say that if I add my Crypto Mom and my Crypto Dad together, they're probably about where the average has been over the last month. It's just split between two.
Yeah.
I like that project, I think, because of what they're doing from a media standpoint. Organizationally, they've invested, they've brought on the right type of legal structure. They're going to be doing a lot of services outside of just the community, and they've got all these co-branding opportunities. So I like that in general, but I think that's one of the things. My wallet has gotten a lot bigger lately, mostly based on these companions. I'm really excited for the reveal on RoboBets because I just love Pablo Stanley's art, and I've got a bunch of them sitting in there. They're just waiting to reveal. They're supposed to reveal yesterday. I think they're going to reveal within the next day. Now, or maybe it was they were supposed to reveal today. Either way, they're going to come up. But then I also wonder, the more things I have in my wallet, do I value them individually less?
There is a thing that I've noticed that happens, that the more projects I collect, it's harder to kind of identify with the projects and be active in each community.
Yes.
I have been I started out with some projects I liked, and then I went really broad for a while because it was fun and there was lots of new projects coming out. I think now I'm definitely, over the last month or two, I've been a lot more focused on kind of waiting till projects mint and then seeing like if the founders are still about it, if it's still the real deal, and then going in. I liked Crypto Dads early on just because the way they revealed who they were. But that seems to be my approach now. And I'm kind of consolidating, even looking at getting into projects that either getting more of projects that I like, or looking at projects that have been out for a while that I haven't gotten into. But I've got a lot of stuff in my wallet that I've forgotten about completely almost. Some of the projects are more or less dead, but
because some of them, we were talking about shrooms and some of the things yesterday.
Yeah.
There's a point where you actually have to do something in order to extract more value from it. It's very easy to forget, like, because when you have too many things in your wallet, like I almost missed something for one of the NFTs I'm in the other day, and I think someone mentioned, they're like, "Hey, don't forget to do this." I'm like, "Oh, geez, yeah, I probably would have missed it," and that's one of the values. And so I think there's this interesting idea of the experience. So we've got this idea of not just owning the art, but then there's this experience underlying it. And if you're an active collector, you are not going to get the value of the experience. So should you discount what you're willing to pay for that? Because you've got certain projects where you just love them. You're going to stay in touch with them. And so the value, and you're never going to sell your last one because you want to be attached to it. Okay, that makes sense. And so you would have the maximum valuation there. But I feel like all the other ones you hold are based on not OPP, but OPE, other people's experiences. So you're saying, hey, I want to be affiliated with this. I like what they're doing, but I probably am not getting full value out of it because I'm not actually going through the experience. I'm just betting that other people will like this experience enough that it'll either maintain or increase in value. Because otherwise, it's really questionable why you should hold it in your wallet.
Yeah, it is, and I struggle with this because it's awesome to see stuff going up in value and what that means in terms of, you know, for everyone in this space, what that might do for them to allow them economic freedom to pursue what they're passionate about. But in addition to that, I'm passionate about the technology and the space and also art. So it's all these like this like soup of interests. And yeah, it's hard. I feel like I've said this before, but I feel like we're buying paintings in the Renaissance right now. Like this is a Renaissance, and I want to buy all of it. I want to like collect it.
But that's the difference, right? So then you were actually buying the art, and maybe there were little communities around, you know, Rembrandts or something like that. I don't know. In this case, though, we have value beyond the art. In fact, I won't mention any of them that I think that I'm in, that I actually like the community more than I like the art.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to offend any of the artists here. And I also understand it's very subjective about what art you like. But I've got more PFPs than I know what to do with right now. And I just, you know, this is just so different than the Renaissance in that way. Yes, it is a Renaissance in one way.
Yeah.
But you have this other utility factor that is just, it changes the equation. And I haven't really thought through what this means in terms of valuation, market valuation versus personal valuation of these. But it strikes me there's something there that should be understood.
Yeah. And who knows what's going to happen. I mean, I know that there was some Discord you and I were on where I don't remember if it was the Mystics one or what, but someone could come and revive some of these dead PFP projects. Like
we looked at that.
There's so many neat things that can happen. I mean, even as far as saying like, hey, not only do you have a crypto dad and the crypto mom you got for that you were able to mint because you got the dad, and now you got the tot, you're also the OG owner of all three of those things. There could be other layers of rewards in the future that these projects are thinking about that I don't think that should prevent people from, you know, again, no financial advice. That shouldn't prevent you from selling if you don't want to, but there's so many neat ways to do stuff with this and reward people. I kind of want to create more wallets and put these in there and then forget I have those wallets, like finding money in old ski jackets or something, like, and then in 5 years find out
today,
like,
say he found an old wallet that he thought he'd emptied, but he found 3 Bitcoin in it. He's like, I was sure I emptied that.
Yes.
And it's like, wow, what a good day that is. I think there's something to be said for that, and particularly the ones that have gone down in value a lot. It's questionable whether, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, whether you're going to be able to claim losses on NFTs because they're classified as not as investment vehicles, but as collectibles, which at least in the US are treated differently. I think in some other jurisdictions they are as well. So you're in that case, you're better off just holding them because at some point they may get revived either by the original project team or another one. And I did look at it salvaging a project that was, you know, looked like a clear rug pull but had an interesting backstory and interesting community.
Yeah.
And we ultimately decided not to because it was not clear that the original founders might just come back and take it over themselves and sort of box us out. So would have been a lot of effort for the community, but then just been screwed twice. But to me, that's going to be definitely an opportunity over the next year because I'm already seeing so many of these things without any life in them that launched in the last 8 weeks.
Yeah. Well, there's also old ones that are just cool, like the bonsai NFT,
that's coming back.
ZenFT. I love that artwork.
Yeah.
I minted a bunch of those. I still have some.
You gave a bunch away
because I had some. I gave a bunch away because I thought it was a neat way to get people into NFTs, and they looked neat. I love Matthew McAllister's comment of like, well, it's about the same price as a real bonsai tree, and I won't kill this one. But I just think there's some really cool stuff out there like that it's hard for me to let go just because I like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. I mean, we've talked about our wallets
Yeah.
because we've got CryptoMoms. I've got some RoboPets showing up. I think I bought something else this week. I'm trying not to buy things. So
Yeah,
I've
I
actually
hear you.
been very good at curtailing them. I think I'm buying things that are very inexpensive or that are just companions. So I'm paying gas or something. Oh, I did. You know what? I did buy some. I don't think I mentioned this, but last week, but I bought some junkyard dog pups, which are sort of companions, but you actually had to pay for them. But I just like the
Okay.
vibe over in that community. So, and actually the pups give you more scrap, and there's some other things. There's a nice gamification element to the pups.
Cool.
But I was very happy with one of my pups, I should say, because it is the Mario pup. So
Nice.
he's basically all the pups are in Halloween costumes, and one of them's dressed up. I got two of them. One of them's dressed up like Jason, and which I'm not really into the horror genre.
Yeah.
It's okay because it's a cultural touchstone. But the one who looks like a Mario, but it's a French bulldog, pretty cool.
Nice. Well, I know you have. I want to mention it before we go to show my own stuff here. We're selling more Mystics NFTs. So
Oh yes,
both Niftorious, Rex, and I are on the Mystics server. It's a very small server of about, I think there's 20 of us right now because there's only 20 NFTs in existence. We're releasing 20 more NFTs starting this week. And those will get you access to that server where we talk about stuff like this and basically share information about projects before they come out, just after they've come out, and in doing so, hope to gain insight and knowledge. Those are going to be live starting on the 28th. So tomorrow at nft.rally.io/SKOT. So check that out. And then, and I want to also hear about your thing as well.
oh yeah. I might as well. We're not going to do the announcement just yet, but I might as well tell people to come to the server. I will. Before I do that, I'll do a little testimonial around NFT Mystics. Really fun. One of the challenges you often have with smaller, more exclusive Discords is, does it just become a ghost town? It's not like, we've got enough activity in there every day, and they're just good folks, and we've all become friends. I think some of them were already friends, but most of them were not. I've met a lot of really interesting people in there, and the smaller scale is really helpful in this way because we get to know each other, because we can self-select into different genres and those types of things as well. But I think it's a great community. So I definitely recommend people check that out if you just want to talk about what you're collecting from time to time. And, if I look at what we're doing with Niftorious, it's actually similar, but it's at scale, right? There's some other things we're putting into it, which are beyond just like talking and education, that we are adding, which will be experiential, so that our goal is to help artists and creators become better at this, right? And work together, collaborate, so they understand both how to run projects, they understand how to collect, become better collectors. And we have all these experiential angles to it, which are, there is a game, but it's not like a lot of people do these games, which are just about having fun. This is about something that's really related to what we're doing. There's a project that they could get to become part of. We're going to actually do an announcement shortly, so I won't sort of step on that. We will have come back here with the leadership team and talk about that. Real focus on artists and artwork, as well as educating this whole crew. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's an interesting time to be doing it because we're in this sort of NFT recession. And we've seen it come down as ETH is pumped, which it normally happens. NFT prices go down because people are trying to get the yield out of the ETH and not miss that. So we're seeing a lot of projects not do well, which wasn't true a month ago. Every project sold out. Now we're seeing a lot of examples. I don't know what the ratio is that are not selling out. So we're trying to think through that and make sure that we communicate this properly. But so fun, so exciting about what we're going to be doing. And I think anybody who's a collector, anybody who's an artist, we're really trying to create a space that they'll say, hey, this is one of the 4 or 5 Discord servers I'm going to pay attention to every week. Okay, so everyone looks at that. Yeah, go down in the show notes. We'll have a link to the Niftorious Discord server. That's the best way to keep track of that. And actually, there's a little bit of an incentive for you because the people who are in there, the first 100 for sure, might be the first 500. We're sort of working out the numbers, are going to have some special privileges that will definitely be worth it. So join us there at Niftorious. And this has been the Niftorious Show. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it once again.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Reach out if you have any questions. I'm Creatorious Rex on the Twitter. We've got Scott at Scott Leach on the Twitter as well. If you want to reach out to us, it's probably the best place to reach us until you get into the Niftorious server, even a better place to reach us. And until next week, happy hunting.